Welcome to Bold and Brash. I am Peter Anthony, your host. I'm super excited to have you on today. Don't forget, hit the like, hit subscribe, do what's necessary. Share this because you are about to get a master class in wisdom. I have one of my dear friends and my mentor, Mr. Jeffrey Flamm. I'm first and foremost, I can't believe you're on my podcast. I'm super excited. So today we're going to outline something that's a little different. I want to hit a bunch of points that entrepreneurs should be doing. So often I look from where I am today and I say, oh, if I would have gone back, I might have done it differently. But I actually did it right for what was necessary to get me to where I am. And I forget certain things. I think we romanticize where we came from, because once you have made a little progress, it's easy to forget the harder things that you did, the soft components of that which made you successful. So I'll give you an example in my life, and then I want to share some really real examples from yours because it's so dynamic. But when I opened my first salon, a lot of people don't know, I was sharing a studio apartment with my brother and I was living on the floor. I would wake up every morning. I had 3 sets of clothes, all the same. So I had my white Oxford shirts. I had my Gap chino pants and my penny loafers. I would iron them every morning because I'd hand wash them. So I would iron them, and I did that for 6 months. Then I got my own studio apartment, still had no money for a bed. I put all my money into my business for almost 2 years, but nobody knew what I did. And I sort of conveniently forgot, right? Because then once you get a bed, you don't like to think about the times you didn't have a bed. No. So I know that you started a really incredible business, and so many people know you for that business or the restaurant business or the real estate business or investing, and so many people know you for so many things that you've done in and out of your biggest gigs. But you've gotten to share some really incredible things that you've done that have made a huge difference in my life because of one little thing that you would share with me that didn't seem like it belonged in the business advice that you give to people, but it certainly, I think, belongs in the business advice. And one of them that you shared, and I know there's many, but you shared something with me that I started putting into my own business practice. You told me that you and your partner in the mornings would say a prayer together about the business, and you'd literally you'd pray for the success, not only of the business, but for the success of all of your employees, all of your vendors, and that you would stay on the right track and do the right things so that you would be honorable to God. And I thought, man, that's so powerful. If people only knew that one thing, that I feel like really kind of aligned your energy as I got to know you personally. I'm like, wow, that's it's so transcendent, because no one talks about that in business. They talk about the success. Hey, you should have the right attorney. You should need the right tax person. And of course you need those things. But share with me some of the little things that really made a difference in your quest to become not only a good businessman, but a better man.
As I think back, what set the stage for the early morning prayer was when Ron and I first had started the business and we were going to go do our first sales calls. We went to meet with Rockwell International down in Seal Beach, Southern California. And Ron's dad lived there. He's a periodontist in Southern California. And he, in our church, was a patriarch. And he said, I felt really impressed that I should give each of you a blessing. And so he gave Ron a blessing, and it told Ron all about Ron would meet his wife and be blessed with children, because he was single then, 33 years old and single. And then when he gave me the blessing, he talked about the business, and that as long as we were honest in our business and turned to the Lord, he would guide us through the business and would be blessed to become a large national company.
Really?
So I think
this was Ron's father?
That Ron's father. So that's how it all
Wow.
started. And so we realized it was important because we had this somewhat of a vision from his father of what the company was going to be, but the importance of turning to the Lord and having him help us. And so every day, wherever we were, whether we were on the road on a business trip or whether we were just in the office, we'd get together and close the door and have a prayer. And honestly, a lot of doors opened I never thought would for us. And so I always felt like that was almost, the Lord was almost a third partner for us. And some people don't get religion, so that doesn't matter to them. But those that understand the Spirit and following the Spirit can kind of understand how much it can help you in your business if you ask.
If you
turn
ask.
to it. Yeah,
You know,
have
it's
to ask.
interesting. I don't know which. I read so much scripture this week, so, and you know I'm terrible at quoting scripture, but I'm fantastic at understanding the essence of scripture.
Absorbing it, yeah.
So, but there is a
good at that.
scripture that talks about the need to ask, the importance of asking, because you can't get what you don't ask for.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, when you told me that, I started really, you know, I started putting that into my day, and I wasn't as consistent as I wanted to be, but for a month I was super consistent every day. I would go into my office, which was a little tiny office, and I would get on my knees and I would pray, and I'd say, hey, you've got to guide me because I don't know where I'm going, right? You know, I'm on this new journey. And I think so many of us are on this journey, even if it's the same journey, today is a new journey because yesterday's over. So we're starting again today. We're putting our boots on, we're getting the sleds out, and we're going to start a new portion of the journey, even if we know where we're going. So I started doing it, and it started making a really big difference, which led to some big changes, which led to a little discomfort because I wasn't in alignment. Tell me, how do you stay in alignment with a partner? There's so many people, partnerships fail, right? The same as at the same rate or faster in business than even in marriage. You know,
Right.
it's hard to find a good partner. What was the secret sauce of that? Because if I ever told any of my vendors or colleagues, I mean, outside of maybe yourself, it was like, hey, let's open this business practice up with a prayer. You know, they would probably lose their minds. Like, really? You want to do that? Like, even men of really strong faith might be taken aback by it.
No.
So how do you find the partner that gets it?
Well, luckily, we worked together in financial planning and selling insurance for a year before we decided to partner and create this new company. So we'd been friends for a year, and I knew what kind of integrity he had. He had a lot of integrity. And so the thing is, we were complementary. I'm really good at numbers and forecasting where things will be and figuring out what things would cost. And he's really good at getting in any door. And he still is. And so he's a national ambassador for the LDS Church. He travels all around and does things for them and over public relations for the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. So he's done great things since we did business and since we sold the company. But he had that talent of getting us in any door. And so once we're in the door, I'm really good at closing, at doing sales and figuring out where the numbers would be. So it was always complementary. So it was clear what his role was and clear what mine was.
So clarity is important in a
And I
partnership.
think you have to have different skills so that one person's really good at something and you're good at something else. So someone who's really good at sales generally is not really good at detail, generally. So you need somebody really good to keep books and finances and manage money. Luckily, I was good at sales and managing money, but he has a magic touch of getting in any door and clients love him. They just love him. So it was really fun to do together. Yeah.
That's
so
awesome.
I think you have to have clarity on what the business roles are. I've seen the same thing with my son and his 3 partners. They all have distinct areas of expertise. And so the company's just grown like crazy. They're in land development. And it's because they all get along as friends and they have fun together. And they do a lot of things together outside of work because they're all friends. And Ron and I were good friends, so we did a lot together as well.
And do you find that it's? I think as I'm hearing you unpack that, what comes to my mind is the fact that you were really good at two different things, that he was good at other things, there was no competition between the two of you. You actually were synergistic instead of competitive.
Totally.
Yeah, and I think that's
well
important
together.
in any relationship. You know, and you know, I use sports as an analogy, but you know, it was interesting to see the relationship between Jordan and Pippen after they both retired, where, you know, there is that animosity, you know, where Scotty Pippen has this potentially this chip on his shoulder where he thinks he might have been exploited, you know, and it's interesting because when he had the opportunity to win championships without Michael Jordan, he didn't, you know, and they were very synergistic together. And that complementary play, that complementary style allowed them to do something that was never been done before and might not ever be done since, because you just have to have the skill sets that don't allow you to compete in the market, right? So that you're not worried about what they're doing, you're excited about what they're doing. That's what I would imagine. Like, oh, Ron got us into another door. All right, cool. I get to go do me.
It was great. And I think marriage is much the same way. If you look at most marriages, people marry somebody almost opposite of them.
Yeah.
Because they admire those things about that person that they're not good at, and it helps balance things out. But you've got to learn how to come to compromise together. So when you don't agree on something, you can talk and discuss it without anger or somebody being proud that if I don't get my way, I'm out of here type attitude.
Yeah.
You've got to say, okay, you don't want to do this and I want to do it. Let's talk about it. Is there a way to do it that works for both of us? And so you end up with a better product always when you have differing opinions and you sit down and discuss it until you come up with the best way to do it.
Right.
And it's usually way better than either of you had in the beginning.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So you start the company. How did you start the company?
Well, what we did
What did the first 6 months look like?
Well, let me kind of just explain what it was. Is we were in health insurance, life insurance, and financial planning. And the HMO Act had passed in 1977 saying that if you have more than 25 employees, you have to offer a health maintenance organization. So now that there's over 400 of them. But it grew really quickly because the government gave interest-free loans to start them. And then they gave it the power of mandate. So if an HMO came into your office and said, you've got more than 25 employees, do you have an HMO? They said no. They handed them a letter and it says you have 180 days to come in compliance, and they would file that with the federal government. After 180 days, if they hadn't offered an HMO, it was $10,000 a day penalty. So that's why HMOs were put in every company that had more than 25 employees. It had teeth. The government gave it teeth. Why did they do that? Because before the HMO Act was passed, everybody just went to any doctor they wanted, got any prescriptions they wanted, and it was never tracked. It was just paid by Metropolitan or Aetna or one of the big insurance companies would pay the claims. And you had a deductible and so on. But nobody tracked what was going on, and they found it was so abused. And so by having a health maintenance organization with a primary care physician that monitored what you were doing, gave you referrals to specialists, now it was controlled and it was controlling inflation. Yeah. So it was cutting the abuse that was going on in health insurance. So from 1977 to 1985, it went from 17 HMOs in the country to 400. So they're different in every state. Like Intermountain Healthcare has their own, IHC. Every state hospital group has their own. Okay. Doctor groups started them. So there was a ton of them started. And so companies were offering them in every state, but they didn't know which ones were good because there were 8 or 10 or 12 in each state. And so we built the first database ever built. I said, there's no place for an employer to go to compare these. The information's filed with each state. It's not filed with the federal government. So we went to every state, to the insurance department, copied every one of those forms they have to turn in by the government that tells everything about the HMO, their profitability, their member turnover, physician turnover,
So you were
grievances.
aggregating all the data.
So we built
by
the first
hand.
database. Yes, and we had to go to every state and get licensed to be an insurance agent in that state.
Wow.
And so 7 states didn't have what they call reciprocity, where if you have an insurance license in Utah, you pay the one in Wyoming, you've got an insurance license there. You pay the Wyoming license fee. But New Jersey, New York, Florida, Texas, Hawaii, a number of those states didn't have reciprocity. You had to sit for their state exam. Yeah. So I had to fly to those 7 states and learn everything before I went there about their insurance law and pass the test to get licensed. So what was the barrier to entry? Number one, nobody had a database, and it took us 2 years to build it. Okay. And nobody was licensed in every state.
So those are the two problems you solved. Yeah.
And we solved those. And so when we went in to an employer, we said, look, we can tell you exactly each HMO, what percent of their employees in that state they can service. We can show you what their average rates are. We can show you turnover on physicians and members. We can tell you everything on the quality of that HMO. So we can make the decision very, very easily. And then the second thing we did is instead of getting all these packets from each HMO in different formats, so you'd have to go home and try to figure out, we want to have a baby. What's the maternity benefit? You're searching in every packet to find it. Oh. We got away from HMO packets entirely, and we custom printed every booklet for every employee that says, based on your home zip, here's what you're eligible for. And it was a chart. It showed it across. You could look across and see what the benefits were on each one and what the cost was at the bottom and make a decision in 3 minutes.
Wow.
And then at the back, it had the physicians within 10 miles of your home based on the closest one for primary care physicians. So you could look and see if your physician's on there immediately. You could make a decision in minutes. And so
they don't even have that today.
No. So we visited.
Does it pay to keep it complicated? I mean, somebody must be making money if they're keeping it complicated.
No, it's a heck of a lot of work what we did. It's really a lot of work. And I just think it's too hard to keep it updated for most people and most companies. So we sold the company to ADP and they go, you're customizing this for all these employees? We're not going to do that. We're going to do it standard. So they rebuilt a system to get rid of, we had 87 programmers on staff. They said, we don't have that many at all of ADP. So they built one program, and they really go after the employers that have 100 or less employees. That's their sweet spot. So they do it a certain way, and they don't customize it like we did.
That's so awesome.
So it grew fast. I mean, we met with 129 Fortune 500 companies and sold 127 of them, all but 2.
Wow.
That's how compelling it was.
You're sitting across the table with Ron. You both have jobs. When did it pop into your head that you should be an entrepreneur and risk everything?
It's interesting because we were in that business selling it, and we saw what employers were going through if they didn't have a good broker. But it was easy to have a good broker in one state. But what do you do if you're in 50 states? Mm-hmm. And nobody had an answer to it. So we go, why don't we build this? So I went and talked to my dad and said, we're thinking of doing this. And his answer was, well, if it was such a good idea, somebody would already be doing it. Right. And I go, but they're not.
I know, right? But this is not the answer you were looking for.
So we did it.
So you saw the need in the marketplace because you were working in the marketplace. And you saw the potential of that particular rise, and you just rode that wave.
Right. Well, Ron's background, he had worked for 2 HMOs. So he had a huge background in HMOs. And I had it in insurance and sales. And so together it made a good partnership. What I tell people, they say, I want to start a business. I said, what do you want to do? And they tell me something. They're going to fix some problem. A plumber, but they have never done that.
Yeah.
And I said, the learning curve is too long and too expensive for you to learn as you go. You can't do that. You need to go to work for somebody in some industry that you like, learn the business while they're paying you, and figure out a better, faster, cheaper way to do it than's being done in any area, whether it's processing, whether it's customer service for employees, whatever. Figure out with technology a better, faster way to do it. Now, you've got to remember when we started this in 1986, we were still wearing pagers. And we had the brick cell phone in our car, right? It's the big one that was plugged in with the cord. So we were just at the beginning of technology, and Federal Express was only like 3 years old.
Yeah.
So Federal Express was new. Faxes had just come about, so you could fax things instead of waiting for them in the mail. And with FedEx, you could get stuff back and forth really, really quickly. And now computers were around. We could get all the data and start doing it, managing data by computer instead of paper. So see, again, you have to watch for a change in technology, and where can a change in technology and my expertise bring together something magic. So what's the new technology? AI, right?
Right.
So people who jump on AI and figure out how can I use AI to market my business without spending a grundle of money? How can I use AI to help write me copy, to help me do contracts? I mean, people, when there's a change in legislation, law that creates opportunity, or a change in technology, look and see how those things can help you in your business and jump on it.
All right. So follow, I'm going to say law, but follow regulation.
Yeah.
So if there's a change in regulation or a change in technology, in your case, there was a change in regulation and simultaneously a change in technology because it was becoming easier to do those things. That's incredible. And so you first opened the business, first 2 years, how were they?
Fun. I mean, they were grueling. Our first year, we were 300,000 air miles because we had to fly to every state.
Wow.
And we had to meet with every HMO to get them to pay us. So that was why it was such an easy sell. The HMOs paid us so the employer didn't have to.
That's literally almost 50 times back and forth across the US.
We were on the road all the time. So when people say, gosh, you were lucky, I go, ask my wife how lucky. I mean, she hardly saw me.
Wow.
But there's a price to pay to build a business. But what I have learned is you don't have to be the innovator of a business or a new idea. You can be the second to market. It's like the first group that did bagels. I can't remember which one it was. They didn't make all the money because they're introducing the bagel concept and advertising the heck out of it.
Right.
It's the second one that came, and whether it was Subway or Blimpie, somebody came up with the idea first, and somebody challenges it, right?
And Blimpie
does
was
better
the
marketing.
First.
Yeah.
Blimpie was amazing, actually, now that I think, with the shredded lettuce. And I loved Blimpie, and it's gone.
It's gone. So what you have to do is say, it's not who's first to market. It's who's most organized and got the best talent to take it big.
Yes.
So get the right talent. And advice I give people starting a business, don't chintz on certain things. There's expensive mistakes. Cheap mistake's expensive mistake. An expensive mistake is getting your neighbor who's an attorney to drop your documents, and he's not a specialist in what you're doing, and he misses a lot of things. And someday you go to court and they can just get through your document and nail you because it wasn't well done. He said, pay an attorney the $450 an hour or whatever, and then I'd get a second attorney and say, I'll give you 1 hour of time to review this and see if there's any holes in it. That if you were coming after this as the opposing side, what could you break through on this document? And I pay a second attorney for 1 hour. Well, that extra $400 or $450, I'll tell you what, you have ironclad documents, really good documents. So I say spend the money where it's really important, because most people lose money through lawsuits, poor written contracts with vendors or customers. It's those kind of things where you really can have a big ouch, a big owie.
Yeah.
And so I say spend the money in important areas like that. Your contract, your business agreement with your partner. While you're friends, you sit down and write down everything. How am I going to buy you out if you're disabled? If you die, how do I buy you out? If we disagree and decide to go ways, how are we going to value the business? And you put that all in writing while you're both friends, and then you follow it later. It's ironclad. So you say, okay, well, if we decide to split up, we'll get one. You find somebody to get a business appraisal, I'll find one. We'll average it. If we don't agree, we get a third and then average the three. So you come up with all of that and put it in writing how it's done. And then there's no question how it's going to be done. You buy some life insurance on each other. So if someone dies, the money comes into their spouse and you own the company. So you're not buying the company. They get the life insurance. And it's cheap. Term is not very expensive. It's like $7 a month per 100,000 if you're in your 30s or 40s. So it may cost you 70 or 80 a month per million to have on your partners. So you put 2 or 3 million on them and say, I buy out the company if something happens to you. So those things can all be done up front without a lot of money, but they're very smart to do.
I love it. I love it. And so find some place where you can innovate, find where things are changing, whether it's in legislation or technology, bring your hard work ethic to it, choose the right partner, the polarity of partnerships that's so important. And then, but every company has a setback, no matter how great the contracts are. Something's going to happen where the company's challenged or the cash flow of the company is challenged.
Right.
One of the things that I share with my coaching clients, and I'm adamant about it, is that your net worth in the beginning of your company is not based on your level of resources, but your level of resourcefulness. Because I believe that every company will hit a point where they're running very, very low on resources, and they have to become resourceful to fill them out. Most companies, they go to the people who funded the company and ask for more money instead of solving the problem that got them out of money.
Right.
What do you say to young entrepreneurs that might be looking to kind of go back to the cow for more milk instead of learning how to build a cow farm?
Well, what we did, and I always coach entrepreneurs this same way, a lot of them have this theory, if I build it, they will come.
That's the worst.
Like The Field of Dreams, that movie that was famous 30 years ago. If I build it, they will come. And what you find out is that's not how it works. You've got to go out and test your product and see if people will open their wallets and actually pay for it. So you start with a more simplified version and see if people will buy it before you spend millions building some product that you don't know people will really buy.
Right.
So you build a simplified version of part of it, and you can always add to it and charge more. So you start with something that you can do fairly simplistically, build it for them, and test it. But I always said we didn't go and hire tons of people to get ready for business. We sold the business, then we hired the people. So we made sure the revenue came in before we hired one more person. We had to know that there was enough money to pay for them and still make our margins.
So genius. It's very gangster because it just makes sense to sell it before you.
Yeah.
But
most people don't.
No, everybody's like, oh, I don't want to feel bad. I want to introduce you to the people who are going to be taking care of your account. What you did was like, oh, yeah, I want your account. And then it's like, I'm going to go hire a bunch of people to manage it. That's so gangster.
Well, let me give you an example. We made a brochure when it was Ron and I, and we had hired a secretary, a sales guy, and a accounting guy. So there were 5 of us. And so when we went into Mountain Bell, that was in 7 states, they said, well, we'd like to come see your home office. They didn't know how home office it was. It was in the basement of my home with 2 desks. So we quick went out and found some shared office, executive suites. The Bush Forum at 53rd South and I-15, that big triangle glass building.
Yeah.
So it used to have one floor that was shared office. And so we went there and they had a great conference room, very impressive, great secretaries. You walked in, it felt professional. And we had just a couple offices in the back, 3 of them for the 5 of us. And so when they said, how many employees do you have? I'm counting the 5, and my dad and brother would help us on open enrollments if we need. I said, well, we've got 7 that can do it. But we printed a brochure that was all stock photography that showed a really great phone center, and we outsourced that stuff. But we had a picture in there of a big corporate skyline on the front of it, and then we had these professional pictures of operators, customer service reps on the phone. We had it also, when you looked at it, you assumed we were big time.
That's so cool.
But we had a list of clients we'd sold locally first, small, just divisions of it, like Marriott, Chevron, American Express. We had local divisions that we had sold. So we had big client names, and then we went after the big clients once we'd proven the
So
model.
you had a series of
Prove the model
recognition.
first.
You proved the model, created a series of recognizable wins, and then took those wins and leveraged them. And so that's, again, I'm saying you got to be resourceful.
So we just didn't hire people until we sold and knew the money was coming in. Then we dared go hire some account reps.
Yeah, and having been in multiple businesses, when I did that, I won. When I built the team first, and then tried to go pitch the team, there's so much pressure on the salespeople because you've got to cash flow the team. That I find sometimes you compromise yourself. Either you're going to take a much lower price because you need the cash flow, and then you wind up being in this quagmire of a series of mistakes, and they're all small mistakes, but they lead to the destruction. Yeah, it's quite interesting to listen to the actual wisdom versus applied wisdom, right? The applied wisdom versus academic wisdom. Academic wisdom states, go get a loan, buy a team, then go sell the team. But what the academics don't realize is if you think you're going to build your restaurant in 30 days, it takes 180, and so you're literally 6 times over budget on holding on to it, right? You can't cash flow as fast as you'd like to in most cases. Yeah. So
have you noticed lately things have really changed? The last 10 years, you could get venture capital if you were getting market share. Didn't matter whether you're profitable.
Right.
Whether you're Tesla, Amazon, in the first few years, they weren't profitable.
Capital, writing it out on a napkin.
Yeah. You could get it fairly easily. In the last 2 years, very hard to find money. Unless you're showing a profit. And the best thing that ever happened, in my opinion, was Shark Tank. Because when I sold my company, I would get an average of 1 call a day. People want me to listen to their business idea or pitch. I'm not looking for money. I just need you to give me some feedback, right? But really, they're always looking for money.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd say, okay, and we'd go to lunch or breakfast or whatever. And they'd say, I've got this great idea. If you'll put up $200,000, I'll give you 10% of the company.
That's
and so I was so glad when Shark Tank came around, because you listen to those guys, they're putting in, they want 30 or 40% of the company for 50,000 or 100,000 or whatever, right? It's more realistic. They say you've got an idea, but if you're not making money already and have proven the model and gotten some market share, they don't touch you.
No.
So it's good. I tell people, watch Shark Tank. You'll learn a lot.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So if I were building a business right now, what industries are you looking at that you think there might be some space for growth?
There's a book everybody should read. My son read it. It's called Buy, Then Build. And he graduated from Oxford with his master's degree. So he's got as good a credentials as anybody. He was CFO of a software company for a number of years, and that company sold, and he got a payout, and he bought this book, Buy Then Build. And it says, when you start a company from scratch, you have less than a 10% chance of it being here in 10 years.
Yep.
You may create a job for yourself, but you don't create a company. You may be a real estate guy, or you could have this salon or a cookie company, and you're the one back there having to toss cookies because you can't get any kids to stay there. Yeah. They keep turning over. So half the time you're down there selling cookies, right? So you can create a job for yourself, but really to create a company that's making you money without you being there every day, those are rare. How Very many rare. Do you see go big, right? But in this Buy Then Build, here's what it says. It's the non-glamorous companies that are going to make the most money in the future. It's the blue-collar companies. It's the HVAC companies. It's the roofing companies, the window companies, the cement contractors, the plumbers.
It's repairing the appliances or the apparatuses that modern people need. The maintenance and repair is key.
And so I was talking down with the Ford dealer the other day when I was down there. And he said, well, we can have this cover installed for the back of your pickup, to cover the bed. And it was like $1,300. And I said, now how much is it installed? He said, $260. said, how hard is it to install? And he said, well, you take it out of the box, lay it across there, and there's 4 eye screw or like C-clamps that you just tighten. And so he said, it takes you more time to take it out of the box than install it. And I said, well, why is it $260 to install? He said, because we pay our average guy out here between $100 and $200 an hour that work in the shop. I go, $100 an hour. You know, that's, if you work 2,000 hour a year, which is full time, you're making 200,000. That's what those guys are getting paid. So you go, where are the people really making the money? Well, he said, we charge $290 an hour because at least a third of that goes to our service guys. So anyway, so my son, what he did is went and bought a plumbing company. Here he's a graduate, got his master's degree from Oxford, bought a plumbing company, had 6 plumbers. Then he bought another one, got contracts with people, friends he knew, and plus his brothers are in the construction business. Got those contracts. So within 2 years, he's up to 50 plumbers. Now, what it talks about in this book is if you get a non-glamorous business that you buy from a baby boomer, they've grown it over the years. They've got loyal clients. They've done a good job. And they make a lot of money. They take home big salaries, them and their partner or spouse, and they still have several $100,000 extra each year that they can take as bonuses if they want, or grow the company, whatever. But none of them have ever done marketing.
Right.
You know, they've just kind of grown it over the years, and none of their kids want to do it.
And they have a database.
They have a database,
they have systems,
loyal clients.
database, clients. They have an infrastructure. And if you start bringing those together, I read the book based on your recommendation.
Yeah.
It was incredible because it really helps you discern. And there's some crazy statistic out there. I think Cody Sanchez talks about it, where the number of baby boomers who are selling businesses every single day, new businesses hit the market, and 80% of those businesses will go unsold.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to take them over.
That's right. So baby boomers' kids want to play and just go out and have fun experiences. Let them want to work hard.
And you can acquire those businesses for pennies on the dollar what it would cost you to create.
Right.
So.
And that's the point. So when you ask what's the future, I'd say unless somebody's a natural leader or natural salesman and they're really good at those kind of things, if they're not a natural, they probably should look at what kind of a blue-collar business could I buy and manage well. And if you're not good at the day-to-day management, you need to find somebody who is.
Right.
Right? But you take that and grow it. So what you do is you market it more, so you double the business, and you add some value-added services. Gosh, if we're going to do your roof, we can bid on your rain gutters. They're old. Let's replace them while we're at it. Mm-hmm. You add value-added services because you have the same CFO, same COO, same person answering the phones every day. So your overhead at the top is a lot less staff to add some other services.
And it adds
so
to
that's
your
what you
average
do.
ticket, which is key. And it adds to frequency because it gives you more to maintain with a single client. So you're going to see them more often and you're going to charge them more money. It's genius.
You're in the marketing business. How many marketing companies have you seen that struggle?
Absolutely most of them. And they all talk about, I'm a 6-figure company, or I'm a 7-figure company. We're doing $1 million, $2 million, whatever. And the interesting part is they don't realize that they're focused on the wrong thing. It's like nail it to scale it. You have to, your process to conversion and then your process of maintenance, when you dial in those two things, right? How do I get a client? And then the second question is, how do I keep a client? And how you get a client is unique to the marketplace, to each marketplace, and to the owners, right? Some people are really good with numbers, so their numbers are attractive to people who like numbers. Some people are really charismatic. They're attractive to the people who like charisma. But the key to business, in my opinion, is understanding the process for acquisition and then understanding intimately how to keep that client. Mm-hmm. And when you keep your eyes on that, that's how we were able to scale to, over 20,000 clients in our database, in our salon group. That 20,000 active, 100,000 in the database is because you're keeping them.
Yeah.
And you've got to be you've got to concentrate on building that relationship to keep them, because the cost of acquisition is so high.
Yeah.
It's cheaper to keep her.
Right. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
we looked at that, and then
Yeah.
we look at additionally, I think marketers don't understand business, so that there's three key components to business, right? There's new client acquisition, there's average ticket price, where you can increase your average ticket price, and you increase frequency. Everybody goes for what they think is the low-hanging fruit. They want more new clients, right? We never did that in our companies. I was nuts about learning and implementing average ticket price. If I could get if I knew you were coming 6 times a year, my goal, and you were spending $100, my goal was to get you to spend $150, and I grew 50%.
Yeah.
Right? It's simple. So how can I give you more of what you wanted? So we did this one test where people would come in for hair color, and people get their hair color generally. At that time, they were getting it every 6 to 8 weeks, trying to coordinate it with a haircut.
Right.
I said, "Oh man, it costs us more money to do a haircut to do a hair color on 8-week-old hair than it does on 4-week-old hair, because the regrowth was so the hair would keratinize after that half inch of growth, and then it would get harder and it would color differently. So there's always these kinds of bands of color. So you wanted to keep your client in every 3.5, 4 weeks. So what I did was I said, listen, would you be willing to come in every 4 weeks for the same price as you're coming in now every 6.5, 7? So let's say 7. It's like, well, why wouldn't I? I said, okay, cool. Here. Would you be willing to pay up front? Most of my clients said, yeah, of course. They're spending a ton of money. I said, but you're going to get almost twice as much service. You're going to get about 60% more service for the same amount of money.
Yeah.
So they would come in, they pay for that up front. They pay in this annual color membership. And they're in the membership, in the fine print, going back to your contract so I don't get burned. In the fine print was, you had to come in every 4 weeks. If you came in after 4 weeks, we were going to charge you for that service, and then you'd be back on it for 4 weeks. So we forced them to come in every 4 weeks. So we used a little less product per application, but more product overall.
Yeah.
So we were able to buy our product. More product means more discounts.
Right.
I looked at it. So I was able to get the products at a cheaper price. So I get the products at a cheaper price. I get them to come in, but they weren't spending any money. So the law of reciprocity is, well, I should probably, I have extra money in my pocket because they prepaid.
Yeah.
So they didn't have to take any money out. So then we tapped on just additional value. So we tapped into that.
You could sell product, couldn't you?
We sold more product.
Yeah.
We had a higher propensity. So our average ticket price went from 87 a visit to 127. Mm-hmm. But our frequency of visits increased by 65%. So we increased frequency of visit by 65%. So we had a 65% growth in business year on year. Mm-hmm. And then we increased the average ticket price by about 45%.
Right.
So we were doubling business every year.
Yeah.
More than doubling business every year. And because they always look good, they got more and more compliments. The more compliments they got, the more new clients we got. Our cost of new client acquisition went down to 0.
Just word of mouth.
Word of mouth.
Yeah.
So we did more. So I think it boils down to, if you can nail the value, once you understand the system of how people buy, can you nail the value? Can you offer them more value, which by default will increase your average ticket price? Then you increase that average ticket price, and if you can get the frequency up, the customers come, because the marketplace gets flooded with goodwill.
Yeah.
So,
well, we've used you for the last 2 or 3 years in marketing for our company, and the reason is a couple things. Number one, you're an expert, unlike anybody I've seen in marketing. You know exactly how all the social media channels work.
Yes.
You know what how often they're constantly changing. You stay on top of that. Mm-hmm. That's huge value to a client that doesn't have time to do that. The second thing I've loved that you do is you have classes. So I can pay for my marketing guy internally to come to your classes and become an expert.
Yeah, we meet with your team.
So you kind of, in a way, teach them how to wean themselves of you to a big degree, but you always have the new stuff, right? Yeah. That they're not going to have time to learn. So I really like that model, what you've done for our company. in that my guy, Brian, who comes to you, just today we met and went over all the stuff he's worked on and a lot of it that you've introduced to us. So see, what you've done is figured out a way to add real value instead of, I'm just going to charge you $3,500 a month for search engine optimization. Yeah. I've been through 4 or 5 marketing companies like that where I never saw value. With yours, I'm always getting value because the ideas he shows me every week he's learned from you bring great value.
And what I've learned from you is how to package that value. One of the things that we do is, because I only think of I know those are the 3 things that move the dial. New client acquisition is not the game that we're in. We're in average ticket price and frequency. That brings in new clients. So I'm just using the same model, but I've applied it to the marketing. So if the marketing can create an opportunity for greater value so that you can increase your average ticket price, well, for an owner, that's like the holy grail, because that's all profit, So if we can increase the average ticket price, we can increase our profit. If we can increase frequency, man, that's the, now we're moving to the trifecta. Right. So everything we do in marketing is about how do we, my only 2 things that I'm focused on now for our agency is how do we get people to want to buy from you faster for more money? Yeah. We want to do those 2 things. We want them to make the decision to use you faster, and we want them to make it for more money. That's all we do. Yeah. That's it. So we boiled it down.
And it's easy to find soon. I've had marketing groups tell me, well, it'll be 6 months to a year before we see the patterns. And I'm going, baloney. You can A/B test constantly and see when I do this 1,000 out and I did this offer versus this 1,000 with this offer. So you can figure it out real quickly. And that's what I've loved about you is you know how to do things quickly. Yeah. Not commit people for a year to test.
No, we want it dialed in. We want to dial in your avatar within the first 7 to 14 days. And then we want to start to execute on that avatar. While we're dialing in the avatar, we're building an infrastructure piece that can be A/B tested. But again, we're not in the new client commitment. We want to take your client base and we want them to recommend new clients. That's our expertise. Going and running ad traffic, Google ads or Facebook ads, although my agency does that, the idea is not that. What we want to do, because that's a transactional sale, and what we want is lifetime experiences. Sure. We want people to stay longer. So if we see that they're staying on your platform for 5 months, my question is, how can I get them to stay for 9? Right. Because I just doubled business. I just added 80% more business, but it didn't cost me any acquisition. Right. So I doubled business by asking a stronger question. Right. So if we can keep people if we can double the amount of time they spend on our platform, then we've really doubled business, and that makes sense. And if we double the amount of time that they spend on the platform, we have more opportunities to buy things, upsells in the platform. So that's even better. And if we get them to do upsells in the platform, now they're going to talk about it because they're coming more confident and familiar with the platform. The more confident and familiar they become with your product, your brand, your service, or your offer, the more likely they are to share it. Mm-hmm. It's like you're really good at jokes. You always remember jokes, and you tell me incredible jokes. I'm terrible at jokes. I'm great at laughing, right? But the interesting part about, is when you tell a joke, it's the reason that people don't tell jokes is I remember your joke is funny, and I remember that I laughed, but if the joke is complicated, I'm going to shy away from it because I don't really remember it and I haven't practiced it, and it's just not my natural tendency. This is the same thing with your product or your service. Yeah. If it's too complicated, if you haven't given them the tools to simplify your product or service so that they can share it and say, oh man, I read faster and retain more. This is awesome. I read 6 books this month. How many did you read? Yeah. Did you know the average CEO reads 3 books a month? I doubled that. I read 6. Now they want to brag about what they're doing because they remember that one thing, how many books the average CEO reads, and they want to be ahead of the curve. So they'll brag about it. The more they brag about it, like surrounds with like. I surround myself with people who are business owners. I talk about how many books I'm reading. What are they going to start doing? Yeah, they want to start reading more books. Yeah. And it's the infinite cycle if you can nail that. Yeah. And we've just gotten good at understanding it. And then I get to hang out with guys like you who really are great at numbers and processes and sales. And I'm like, oh man.
Really circling back to what we started talking about here is, what business should I go into? Everybody thinks going into some kind of technology is the answer. And I'm saying, well, look at other businesses. Don't scale out blue collar businesses of maybe buying those or developing something there, right? And what you talked about is, how do you increase the ticket price? And that's what we're talking about. You know, if you go into roofing, how can I sell gutters too?
Oh, sure.
You need new garage doors. I could get those for you. I mean, as you can afford to build, you add services on.
Absolutely.
But the goal is in a bit, you buy a business, maybe you buy it for $500,000 or $1 million. The goal is to double it or triple it in 5 years and sell it for $5 million.
Well, and I don't want people to be afraid of that number. If you're buying a business for $500,000 or $1 million, in general, you're not giving them the whole thing. You're actually giving them a percentage of that, and they're holding notes over 5 years. You're paying
Usually,
back.
you pay them some, but you get the down payment with an SBA loan,
Right.
or some money you've
So
saved.
the number doesn't have to scare an entry-level entrepreneur. You can go out and buy $1 million business. Now, the great thing you're saying is, yeah, and if you do it right, in 5 years, you're going to get 5x on that business.
Right. So what you do is you get a good book, because authors, the experts in any industry, love to share all their secrets in a book. So you don't have to hire a consultant. Just read their book.
I know, right?
And underline and follow what they tell you to do. Because it's like having the consultant sit next to you. They've told you how to do it.
And
Just
you could go and you can ask the same question as many times if you want to get that answer. If you're a guy like
just
me,
go back there,
right, who's bad at jokes, I could just read it until I can read it until I
now.
memorize it. Now I know. So okay, I can apply it. Yeah, that's great. So here's what we want to leave you with. We want to read more books.
Right.
We want to don't be afraid of big numbers. Look at buying something that's already built and then building it bigger.
So those are things I would share. Is if you're trying to decide what to go into, don't always think it has to be a high-tech business. There's lots of businesses out there, and you can probably buy one cheaper than starting from scratch. And like Peter says, how do I get motivated? And I've done so many different things, is I'm a reader. I wasn't a reader, and then I found a speed reading program in Japan in the 90s after I sold my company, and it changed my life. I became a very good reader. And so I'd read a book a week, and that changed my life. So I bought the rights to all of the rest English-speaking countries. And we did 300 million in sales on this company doing an infomercial, selling speed reading, back from 2001 until 2008 when the economy crashed.
300 million.
We did 300 million in sales. Okay, well, what did we do since? Got it into schools, and then decided during COVID, kids aren't reading. They're behind in school. So I built a free version, simplified version of it that's in the App Store, free for everybody that's listening.
Where can they find it?
It's called Infinite Mind Brain Exercises.
Infinite Mind Brain Exercises. It's in the App Store on Apple and in Android. Infinite Mind Brain
And just
Exercise.
know, it's the second one that appears. First one, when you do a search, is always going to be a paid ad.
Yeah.
Never go for the first one.
Never go.
Go for the second, because the first one's a paid ad, and it's not the one you're looking up, right?
at.
So get it there. Incentivize your kids to do it or you to do it. Come up with an incentive. It takes 7 minutes a day. Do it 40 times. You'll triple your reading speed and increase your comprehension by over 60%.
When we're talking about that, what's the ROI on? We talked about business really quick to just come in full circle again and do a little weave. Average ticket price. So you're increasing the average ticket price, but you increase frequency. It's the same thing with reading. If you can get more out of one book, you got a greater value, you increase the value, and now you'll read more. So you increase the value by retaining more and reading faster. Then you read more books, and what are you going to start doing? You're going to start changing the language of how you speak. You're going to start changing the way you think and react, because you're absorbing so much more information at such a much higher pace. There's no place to go but to become more successful.
Right.
So I think
I just tell people, if you're reading, it gives you ideas every time you read a book. you can gain 1 or 2 or 3 ideas. If you implement them, they'll make your company successful.
So I never like to end a podcast without an ask. Would you be open to coming on again?
Sure.
Would you mind?
Anytime. Yeah.
Nailed it. Guys, thank you very much. This is Peter Anthony. I was here with Jeffrey Flamm. Thank you so much. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Come on, do me a favor. I'm trying to build this channel. You need this information. Nail it, scale it, take it to the next level. Love and light, guys.